Good morning. My name is
Good
Inga
morning.
Cotton. This are Charter Moms Chats, and we've been going live on weekdays to talk about what's happening with distance learning and what families in San Antonio need to know. So I am the founder and executive director of San Antonio Charter Moms, and we have a guest today. We have Petra Pajtas, who is the COO of Basis Charter Schools. And Petra's background is, let's see, she has been head of school at Basis Phoenix, and actually Petra is joining us from Arizona, but because that's where Basis started. But thanks to the magic of video conferencing, it's like she's right here, right? And let's see, she's also worked in corporate finance and conducted neuroscience research. So wow. But I know Petra has been very busy this summer making sure that Basis charter schools are ready to open. And just before you came on air, she was telling me that the schools in Arizona have already opened, and the Texas schools open next week. And then DC, when does DC open? Is it
On the 24th.
24th? Okay, all right. So thank you, Petra, for taking some time out of being, very busy. The goal today is to talk about the Basis Charter Schools reopening plan, and we're posting on the blog today kind of an overview of that. But what the plan is called is Families Choose in 2020-21. And what I want that I think what that highlights is the fact that Basis Charter Schools is offering your parents a choice of having on either choosing distance learning for a period of time, or once the local authorities allow campuses to open for in-person instruction, then families can choose that. So Petra, I wanted you to ask you about why is it important to offer families that choice, and kind of how does it work?
I think, thank you, Inga, by the way. It's lovely to be here. I'm really excited to share with your Texas audience some of the things that we're doing at Basis to be ready for reopening, first virtually and then eventually in person. I think that the question of choice is one that we talk about a lot when it comes to charter schools, right? It's an intensely personal decision. So when we approached Families Choose 2020-21, we really focused on the idea that circumstances in families are really different. The reasons that students may need to return to school or not, depending on whether the parents feel is safe, will vary significantly from household to household. And there's no one in better position to make that choice for the family than they are. That said, of course, there are considerations at the beginning, especially as we're monitoring cases around the country, to ensure that our teachers and our students are as safe as can be. So we're starting online on the 17th, but we have this Families Choose plan in place so that as soon as it's feasible to do so, we'll be able to revert to it.
Right, right. I think that's one thing in the so I'm going to fly up on the screen. The San Antonio Charter Moms discussion group. We're up to almost 7,000 members, and it's been very active this summer because families have been talking about there's this extra layer, right, of not just choosing which school to enroll your kids in, but when presented with the option, do you choose on campus or distance learning? And the message that our admins keep reinforcing is that it is a decision that's unique to each family and their circumstances, and that we need to just treat each other with kindness because it's what works for one family won't necessarily work for another. Um,
Exactly.
yeah. Okay, so for families that choose distance learning, um, how are you guys finding the right balance of having like live instruction and recorded videos, and then time for independent work, and then time to have like Q&A with the teacher? And I'm sure it varies depending on what grade level and how mature the students are.
It does. And I think that's a great question. And it's something that I think is on top of mind for a lot of parents about how they're going to balance screen time with making sure that their students are getting a rigorous education, even if they're online. So our consideration was let's preserve the things that the students are already familiar with. We have entry grades. They're typically kindergarten in our primary schools, and then normally fifth or sixth grade, depending on the campus, in our secondary schools. So we know that most of our parents already know what we worked on in the spring, and they already know what the rigorous live schedule is like when you're in on-campus instruction. So we aim to preserve the structure of the day so students have a similar schedule and they have a really structured day. So school has an end. It doesn't just keep sort of drowning on till midnight because that's what happened, unless you really need it to be that way because of your personal work arrangements or because of family care and so forth. So what we wanted to do is really delineate the day that will be the school day, and then inside it, compartmentalize into live instruction and then guided practice or independent practice. So while the day is almost standard duration, the amount of time that the student spends on the screen is not. So and we've already seen this in Arizona because we opened online in Arizona, but what we're doing basically is the teacher starts the instruction with live instruction or pre-recorded content as well. So over the summer, I think a lot of schools, I've been reading a lot of articles, a lot of schools have been so focused on the in-person reopening because everybody was really optimistic that September would bring good news. That it was really challenging to balance that with preparing the distance learning. So what we did in June and July is select a group of teachers who were really adept at distance learning instruction and recording good content and pacing, and having them pre-record materials and design lessons that sit better in this environment. We use Microsoft Teams and our proprietary software, Spork for All. So we structured it so that there would be, the teacher could either push a button, push out recorded content, or join a classroom with the students, have their videos on, interact with them, recorded for students who are not able to be present at that time, and then say, all right, now you are off to your independent work. Now pull out your assignments, work on this on a sheet of paper. This is how you turn it in. This is what happens next. And then Basis charter schools are famous for student hours and parent hours, which is time for students to get support outside school. And it was a challenge. We needed to translate that to the digital medium as well. So teachers will be able to video conference with students during student hours to give them independent help, small group tutoring, and so forth. So we're taking all of the elements of what a basis charter school education in person is and doing our best to translate them with fidelity to what the online environment is, so that a student, if they make the choice to switch, could also easily transition back to the in-person classroom. And we do that at the ends of grading periods.
Right. So at the beginning of a grading period, a family makes the choice of distance learning or on campus, provided the campuses are open, that's safe judged by the local authorities. And then if they feel unsafe, they can stay home, right?
Exactly.
But just because of preparation and needing to, manage the campuses, if they want to come back on campus, they have to wait till the next grading period, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
I think there are a lot of logistical components to that, including the transitions associated with students and getting the teachers to be ready for the students to come back to campus. And I think the changing conditions will mean that there will be natural points at which parents will want to come back, right? Because they reassess the risk associated with coronavirus.
Right. That's something in a recent video. So anybody who's, following this either on the YouTube channel or on Facebook Live, you can go back to a recent video where I was talking about in San Antonio, there was a amended health directive from Bexar County, and they've created a slider, like a dashboard that shows, green, yellow, red. We are squarely in the red zone right now in Bexar County. So, but like you said, families will be watching that, and that will influence their decision about, of course, when campuses are allowed to reopen, but when families feel safe, depending on the family, right? Depending on their circumstances to enroll their kids. I wanted to comment on you're talking about like how to using the basis school day, the on-campus school day as a starting point, and I think that's a point of familiarity, and it's something that works, right? I mean, basis schools are some of the top-rated schools in the entire country, and so it works. So you want to keep that, but also you're just being in tune with the strengths of the teachers, right? Of the personnel, right? Like, which teachers are going to want to have the in-person instruction, and then, identifying those stars, right? Who can, really effectively deliver lessons online. And then the effect is that students are not necessarily tied to their computer all day, right? But they're getting like a jump start from the teacher, right?
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay.
And what we've noticed actually in Arizona and Baton Rouge, where we started at the beginning of last week, is the classroom teacher that's assigned to that group is so excited to see their students and to do live instruction that they're bringing in material that was prepared over the summer. And it becomes part of their live class, which then after direct instruction goes to independent practice, as opposed opposed to just playing the pre-recorded video. So that was an interesting unintended consequence. We wanted to give them as much independence as possible because we really thought, the managing the preparation also once the Families Choose program can come back into action is really difficult, because now you're telling them, although you have the same number of students, you have two completely different modalities in which you need to instruct. So part of the, we call them OCIs, which is outside classroom instruction mentors. And part of the OCI's role was supporting the teachers to help manage the amount of preparation that they need to undertake to appropriately serve both their in-person and online students during Families Choose. So we did this for core classes in grades K through 8. And then for our lovely electives, right? We have a well-rounded liberal arts curriculum, which is maybe not the reputation that we're famous for. Everybody talks about math and science at basis, but we love the arts, right? We care about music. We talk a lot about history and social science. So in our well-rounded curriculum, we also needed to make sure that those other subjects don't take a backseat. So while we're managing screen time, we're asking, for instance, our arts teachers to think about project-based learning for our distance learning students, have weekly check-ins, let's work on your piece. Let's talk about the concept in art history that represents this piece. And then let's give you more flexible time for working at your leisure with your parents' schedules and so forth. Same for PE, right? We want all of you to be active and to get your exercise in, but it's possible that you can do the jumping jacks for the particular day during a time that is not the normally scheduled PE class. So we're trying to manage that while also still keeping consistency, giving them breaks and windows.
Right, right. Yeah, so the core classes are the ones that have the I guess, given that like no student can handle a whole day of screen time, right? So ration the screen time so that the core classes get the most support as far as like videos or like spending time with teachers, right? And then
Right.
be more creative about the specials, like the arts and the PE, and giving kids give them direction and inspiration about what to do, and give them support, but let them have some flexibility about how they accomplish it.
Exactly. And to give the teachers the same, because of the number of students that have experiences in these courses, right? So one of the hallmarks of the basis curriculum is that we actually offer the specials in grades below what is standard, right? So normally, like, you assume you get maybe music education in fourth, fifth grade more comprehensively, but in the basis curriculum, it's present since kindergarten. So making sure that the kids are able to allocate time for it, so no subject feels sidelined.
Yeah, yeah. Okay, well, this is a question I didn't warn you about, but I'm wondering about like the connections classes and things like
Sure.
engineering. Like those are things that I know that the families I know in San Antonio really love those. And but I'm wondering, how do you translate that to a distance learning experience?
So I think we needed to be really cognizant of limitations and supplies, but to be really creative about having them be still project based and having them be with limited supplies able to be carried out at home. So the connections class is this idea of applying hands-on experience or hands-on practice to concepts that are learned in other classes. So for instance, in core math and science and social science, combining those and in a project that normally has a tangible end product, but it's able to be done with a scenario. So, like a description of a situation, maybe it's about mummies, maybe it's about something else, that you can then carry out as a project that you can share back with your teacher. So, we think that it's perfectly plausible because you can do it independently and flexibly. I think there's also opportunity for collaboration between students on Microsoft Teams to be able to check in with each other and have the teacher show off what the students are working on and discuss how it's working. It's definitely no substitute for in-person, hands-on together, but I think we can make the best of what we've got.
Right. Okay. Well, that segues into my next question, which is about the technology. So you mentioned Microsoft Teams,
Mm-hmm.
and you also mentioned Spork, which is the proprietary software, and that's what the students have on their tablets. So, but I'm wondering, are there any um, changes that you made to how you're using? I get one thing I just want to comment, like talking to Basis families, like Basis got the transition to distance learning very quickly. I mean, it was like there was sort of spring break, like some schools had like an extra spring break, whereas Basis just like is like, oh, okay, we're on distance learning now. Like nobody lost any time. It was incredible. And I think being already a school network that embraces technology, um, and having maybe a healthy sense of paranoia about, right,
There
and
you
having like a
go.
global perspective, right, meant that you know um, instead of wishing for things to go back to normal, Basis just dug in and figured out how to make the best of the reality that we have. So that's my observation from talking to
Thank
basis
you.
families. But what changes have y'all made to the technology since the spring, like as you sort of get ready for
Sure.
fall?
I think that's something we spent a lot of time thinking about this summer, how to improve what we had in the spring and how to make it more interactive so students stay engaged longer and they feel like they're in a great position to get a rigorous basis education from home. So I think part of the challenge, right, was in the spring as we transitioned, first we did digital packets in order to be able to quickly support our students while we got our infrastructure up to be able to do instruction. In schools that serve grade 5 and up, we had quiet advantage in that we use these Spork tablets for our Spork math curriculum, and because of that content, those students already had the devices, so that helped us a lot with making sure that I have access to technology. And then as we transitioned from that and made sure students had access to Wi-Fi if they needed it and to laptops that they needed it, we were able to bring in more of the Microsoft Teams component. Over the summer, what we learned is I think there was a lot of desire for video, and we needed to get good at how we're going to manage classrooms when second graders can mute and unmute themselves, right? And parent arms reach into the frame to put them back into a chair. And that was something that we needed to think about over the summer. So we switched and we enabled video for all of our grades in order for the students and the teachers to have that interaction while also being really clear about the fact that pre-recorded content is still just fine. We did a lot more summer professional development in order to make sure that teachers feel comfortable in Microsoft Teams. And we launched the Spork for All software, which is a web-based platform. So you just navigate to a website, log in with your credentials that also work in Microsoft Teams, because our schedule is pretty complex. When you look at a sixth grader at a basis charter school, they're taking chemistry, physics, and biology 3 times a week. That schedule is not the same as having something that's 5 times a week in the exact same slot, easy to navigate. You'll always remember where you're supposed to be. So this Work for All platform came out of this idea of we need to push what the student's schedule is to the student in a live fashion. We need to be able to take attendance even when they're working independently as a beginning for our measure for engagement, not our only one. And it needs to be easy to use because we serve students in grades K through 12. So that came over the summer. The development work was all done over the summer, so that students are able to do this. And it has worked quite well in Arizona. The students start in Spork for All, and then they transition to Teams, especially when the teachers want to do live lessons.
Okay. So, and then when they access Spork for All, can they do that from their laptop, or does it have to be from the tablet?
Nope, they can do it from their laptop. They can do it
Okay.
from any device that has Chrome enabled. That's our most compatible
Right.
browser. Safari works well as well for iOS users, but it's an independent platform, so it's easy. And students in grades that don't have tablets yet are also able to use it.
Right. Oh, that's great. Okay. Um, yeah, I think that the video thing well, I mean, Teams wasn't really meant as a academic, right? It was meant more for like corporate workspaces, right? I think
Exactly.
we talked when we spoke in the spring, he said that like, Teams was what people, or maybe it was Andrew Sturbin said that like it was what internally Basis was using to manage, because the network is very spread out, right? You're in multiple states and but even then, like not everybody in Basis embraced using Teams. Sometimes people would rather, fly or just have a phone call, right? So,
Yep.
so so it was a learning curve internally for people at Basis to get comfortable using Teams, and then realizing like, how to use it as a learning platform for students and how to manage the privacy concerns, and then, like you said, make sure that it's as engaging, interactive as possible, so that the students are working hard and really wrestling with the material and trying to achieve the level of excellence and the high expectations and the rigor that Basis is known for, right?
Exactly. And
Yeah.
it's a challenge. I think to suggest that it's perfect on day one would be misleading. But I think that every day something improves, right? Students understand how to make the application switch. Students understand how to get their login right the first time. Teachers are comfortable sharing their PowerPoint presentation, right? I think every school, especially in the first week when they're using new systems, distributing new logins, is going to have challenges. But we've seen in Arizona that I think one of our real advantages is that our teachers are really adaptable, and our admin teams in our schools are really able to adjust from lessons learned. So while we were opening Arizona, we had these daily debriefs about what went well and what the schools that were about to open the next day needed to pay attention to, so they didn't experience some of the, for instance, like an internet surge on the first day in a particular campus, right? So I think having that and having those debriefs and talking to administrators so they can pass on to their teachers, these are the common challenges you may face. Let's be ready for it. It might happen. And let's do the best we can in this completely different environment while making sure that our kids are learning as much as possible, and the experience is as close as possible to in-person instruction.
Yeah, yeah. Using continuous improvement to try to
Yep.
keep. Yeah, yeah. Um, well, I wanted to. Or is there anything more about the distance learning that you wanted to comment on, or should we talk more about like what it might be like on campus once the like local authorities say it's safe for campuses to open?
Sure. So for the distance learning, I think the important part is that as we open online next week, every student is going to be able to experience this, right? Because we're going to be in this system, and everybody gets their logins distributed at the end of this week. They'll be able to play around a little bit, watch some tutorials. So there will be a period where families can decide, does this work for me? Is this, as I made my family's choice, is this what I want to be able to do, at least for the first grading period? And then once we transition back to the school, I think it's also important to know what type of safety precautions are we able to take and how are we minimizing the risk of COVID infections at the school. So I'd be happy to talk to you about the precautions that we're taking on campus. So,
Okay.
I'm actually sitting in the basic school. I know you can't tell because I'm right against the wall. I'm a basic good year in Arizona, and what you can know about the place is we've structured our entry procedures and our exit procedures in order to have students come into the school in a way in which we are able to ensure that they're symptom free. So there's some questionnaires that we're asking in a really gentle and private fashion. So the information is not information that shouldn't be isn't collected, but we need to make sure that our students are coming in without fevers, for example, right? And that they're spending as little time as possible in largely congregated groups, and that they're appropriately socially distanced as they're coming in. So that's the first step. We have sanitizing stations throughout the school, and we have signage reminding students of proper hand washing techniques, the 6 foot distance in hallways. We're restricting flow in hallways to one direction so that students are always facing the same direction as they're traveling from class to class. But we're also minimizing actually the amount of time spent in the hallways by having standalone groups, which is a little bit different from how we normally do it, right? Our students transition typically from class to class. Once we reopen, it'll be the teachers transitioning for the foreseeable future instead.
Right.
We have to do lunches in the classrooms in order to keep that cohort together as much as possible. They have sequences for like frequently cleaning their hands, right? There are sanitizing stations in the class. The desks all face in one direction. The teacher knows where 6 feet will be from students, right? Like mark it, because these precautions are super important. And then students are asked to wear a mask, and teachers are also asked to wear a mask during instruction. So whenever 6 feet are not possible, and when students spend more than 10 minutes together with other students or adults. So these are, it's a tough process getting a system that works well and getting everybody to know what needs to be done. And there's no perfect system, right? They're kids, and we know that, but we need to make sure that we teach procedure as much as possible so that they feel as safe as possible without feeling like they're robots on campus.
Right, right. And then, yeah, you just try to have good procedures, provide the hand washing and the hand sanitizing, right?
Mhm.
Make sure that the drop off and right. And there's also procedures to be prepared for if like if a student or a staff member shows symptoms on campus, then handling that in a private way, but that keeps the campus safe.
Exactly. So one of the things that we're doing is we're actually creating a different waiting area, a private waiting area for students that may have symptoms like fevers and coughs and so forth, that is separate from the health coordinator's office, which is normally also the place you go if you need a Band-Aid, maybe you aren't feeling particularly well that day and you just need to check in with someone. So those two places are separated, and we have protocols associated with cleaning the area where the students would wait for pickup, and the parents would be immediately notified if the students have symptoms that are by CDC guidelines suggested to be of COVID-19. We know we need to be able to be prepared for that. We wish it would never happen, but we need to make sure we have a process associated with it. And we know that students may need to self-quarantine as a consequence, right? If they come in contact with individuals who either have confirmed cases of COVID or are suspected of having COVID. So we have protocols in place for that as well. And while we won't be doing any testing ourselves on campus, we will have resources for where people can go get tested, because if students have symptoms, they'll be able to return faster to campus if they have negative tests.
Right, right. That's yeah, and I guess I mean if families want, they can. There's more details, and like we link to the Families Choose plan in the blog post,
Thank
and
you.
that has links to so I know the basic families I know, they're all readers, right? They all want to like click through and get the details on stuff. So whenever we publish a blog post about BASIS, it always gets a lot of views because I know BASIS families are the type of people who do their research. So
Well, thank you for doing that.
yeah, yeah. Well, I kind of want to like step back and ask kind of a big picture question, like about sort of about basis culture, and I guess sort of in two ways. One is like how um, I mean, COVID is a really difficult situation, and it's caused so many things that we expected to just get thrown out the window. But I feel like that in some way, I really admire how Basis has adapted to a very unexpected situation, and I think that has something to do with the culture of Basis charter schools, but I don't really know how to explain it because this is sort of my hunch or my observation. And then I'm wondering if you could also comment on like how what we've already talked about this some, but like, how does the distance learning option or sort of the, on campus with social distancing, how to preserve basis culture even under these different circumstances? Sorry, big question.
That's a really good question. I think the basis culture is really paramount to what students experience when they're in the building, and I think it's one that we can actually translate to distance learning as well. So one critical piece of that, I think, is that everybody's really attentive and committed to students learning and learning to advocate for their own academic success. And I don't think that's location limited. So everybody has this attitude of, let me help a student succeed. What kind of supports do they need to be academically where they wish to be, and to help them understand how to get help if they're struggling with the subject. I think it's important to be challenged, and the adults in the building know how to hold a high bar, but help students be elevated to reach it. And I think that is also visible in the culture and the interaction with students. In a building, if you walk up to them, a student will happily show you their communication journal, their CJ, and show you how organized they are, what subjects they have, what homework they'll have for the night. And I think that's something that we can also preserve in our digital learning system. So for instance, we've focused on making sure that the teachers emphasize the use of the CJ, even though the student is always near the same surface, right, when they're working from home. And I think part of it is a school autonomy thing. So we have produced guidelines on how to ensure safety, maximize safety, and decrease risk when we reopen. But we know that no two campuses have the exact same footprint. And as a consequence, the local administrators, leaders, and teachers, and how they choose to make the modifications that are most in line with their culture is going to be really important with what they can deliver. And it's also why they're adaptable, right? So part of the reason we can have these lessons learned sessions is because everybody's always pooling information about what needs to change. And I think that general mentality is always there. Everybody I've interacted with has this go-getter attitude. We're just going to be able to do the best we can. We're going to make sure that these kids are learning. That's what we're here for. We want them to have the best world-class education they can. And we're going to have to make changes along the way in order to do that. And I think that's true in the in-person schools as well. There's a routine, but there's not this stagnant routine that we're just doing because we don't know why we're doing it anymore. So same approach in distance learning.
Yeah, well, under these difficult circumstances, it's very easy to um, almost feel despair or just say like, well, we give up. We're just gonna, or like, let's just take a gap year or something. But I don't want my kids taking a gap year. In fact, I want to try to find ways to maximize this, right? Like, like over the summer we were sharing learning activities, right? And which I know we're contributing to the stereotype of Basis as a STEM school, but Audrey Hagopian, your colleague, is the right director of primary schools in the Arizona region. Like, she did these great science demonstrations, and it's because like so this culture, right, of being committed to students learning I think is really beneficial to the students because I think that I don't know, trying to take some kind of gap year or trying to like lower the standards, I think is actually counterproductive. I think that having high standards and having goals to reach towards and having mountains to climb, I think it's good for students' well-being because then they have a sense of pride and confidence in
And
what they're
structure.
doing.
Yeah, and
Yeah,
structure.
yeah.
Right. So one of the things our CEO wrote a letter to the teachers as the Arizona schools were starting, and it was just a reminder. Our mission hasn't changed, our vision hasn't
Mhm.
changed, our commitment to excellence hasn't changed. The circumstances certainly have, and we understand that because of that, there's some things we have to adapt and change. But at the end of the day, if we remind ourselves what those things that we're committed to are, then we'll be able to deliver an excellent education. The students will be engaged, and the fact that they have to stay home potentially, or that they haven't seen their friends in some time, the pain of that will be dulled somewhat. It's not going to be perfect. It won't go away. We all wish COVID would go away, right? And we could just all go back into the school. But we're making the best we can and doing the best we can with what we have.
Yeah.
We think that the students need that education, right? There are a lot of pieces that cover how this generation might have a gap that they can't recover because of COVID, right? Because of a year potentially, almost, if you add up all the different parts of not having instruction or not having as much instruction as they would in person or the other services they're used to from schools. Um, but I think we can minimize that. So it might not be perfect, but to throw up our hands in the air and just say, oh, well, I guess 1 year of no school is definitely not the basis way.
Right, right. Yeah, yeah. Well, that's what that does capture. That's what I wanted to us to talk about was like basis culture and how does it, how is basis culture adapting these strange circumstances? But like you said, the mission is the same, the vision is the same, and the high expectations are the same.
Yep.
So, okay, I want to before we close out, I want to be sure to mention that there are new campuses opening in this Texas region. And so the one closest to where I am now is based in San Antonio Northeast. And some of my closest friends are like so excited to get started next week and get their logins. And um, so can you want to comment on the school openings and things like that?
Sure. So we're starting on the 17th online. The Northeast campus is in the Live Oak neighborhood, just off I-35. For any parents who are just learning about us, reach out to our school leaders. You're able to visit us on the website and schedule an appointment, talk to individuals about what that experience is like. And then we also have a school coming in Austin, which I think maybe you have a banner for as well. So our Austin school is in the Crestview neighborhood. It's going to serve grades K4, and the founding head of school of that campus is a seasoned basis veteran as well. So if you live in Austin or have friends who live in Austin or are still interested, we may have limited seats available. Feel free to reach out to them. We're happy to help.
So there's
Thank
the
you.
URL for Austin, and
Thank you.
here's the one for San Antonio. Yes, and yeah, and then here is the link. This is the overall enrollment link, right? That can take you to any basis campus in any region. Um,
Exactly. So in all four regions, and it's very easy to fill out the application. Once you've done it, you'll get contacted by the school depending on whether there's a wait list at that campus or whether there's a spot for your child.
yeah, yeah, and we in the so I'll update the description of the video with the link to the post that we have coming out today. That's the post coming out today on the blog is about the back to school and the reopening and stuff, but it's got links to the coverage that we've had over the past few years talking about. We have a guide to the basis charter schools in our region. Last year I was able to tour the basis medical center campus, which is a primary, and then also Chavana, which is the big kids. I don't know
Exactly.
how I can't tour the campuses this year. I don't know what I'm gonna do.
Well,
Maybe
almost,
virtual
almost.
tour.
You
Yeah.
can, yeah. So you can do a virtual tour.
Yeah.
We also have some appointments where small groups can do tours if necessary. But the virtual tours have actually been pretty popular in Arizona, at least. Of just a school leader taking you on a tour, or a school administrator taking you on a tour, so you can see the building. It's not quite the same as when you see the kids learning, but
Yeah.
the best we've got, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But I encourage families, especially if you've been listening to Petra talk about, how Basis is adapting to distance learning, like, investigate more about Basis and because it is whether it's in person or distance learning, it is a high quality education, it is a world-class education, and it will prepare your kids for a life where they have lots of choices. Whether it's, academics or, whether they're capstone projects, if they want to travel and do research, they're just I've seen BASIS students do really exceptional things, and I'm really grateful that we have BASIS schools in Texas.
Thank you. I would love to talk to you for another hour about all the things that the kids can do as part of the curriculum.
Yeah,
but I trust that our viewers will be able to do a little bit of research on our website, and we're always happy to answer their questions. So feel free to reach out to us, and we can
yeah.
tell them about capstone projects as
Yeah,
well.
that's right. That's right. Well, and we'll be updating the posts about Med Center and Chavano and things like that, and we can update with like more examples of awesome capstone projects.
That's
Okay.
wonderful. Thank you.
Okay. Great. And Petra, any closing thoughts about back to school? Um,
Um, I
any
think
lessons learned from Arizona?
I think know that your kids will learn the technology necessary to navigate any system. Probably by the end of the week, they'll be more proficient than you or I can be. Maybe not you, but me. And know that independently of what that feels like on the first day, that they are really adaptable and they're going to do an excellent job at learning online for the foreseeable future that is necessary. And then if you choose to do so, your own families choose as well.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's a really positive message, and I hope that I feel like I'm presenting BASIS as an example of a school that has high expectations and is as prepared as you possibly can be for these strange circumstances that we're in. So
Thank you. I appreciate
yeah.
that.
Okay, good. Well, that ends things on a high note of like hope. Yes, the kids, they will master the technology.
They will.
Yeah. Okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much for joining us, Petra, and thank you for like helping me with all the research about BASIS back to school and the Families Choose plan. And best wishes for a successful school openings in Texas next week.
Thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And thanks for having me.
Okay, all right, take care.